No, that's just a generic. Who knows?
We got this fixed. How's everybody doing? My name's Guy Tinker. I keep bees. That's one of the, well, actually, I'm a computer technician. Didn't show there, but you know, such is life. No technical difficulty. But my wife and I are beekeepers. We've been playing with bees for somewhere in the 10-year range now. We are from Florissant, and all of our colonies are in Florissant. We have between 30 and 40 of them that we keep around up there in different spots. And our bees are all away from us a little bit, so they're not that far away, but we see them about once a week, okay, like a lot of beekeepers do. They're not in our own yard, so I don't see ours swarming a lot because hopefully they do it when I'm not there, so I don't get depressed. But we do collect a lot of swarms. Last year we collected about 19 of them, and we averaged somewhere between 15 and 25 on a yearly basis, because I have managed to make us famous in that area up there on Facebook and with all of the pest control companies and everything, the tree companies, so they call us. I mean, we get a lot of calls. But I was going to talk about collecting swarms, you know, and what there's a process to go through, and we've done some stuff that was wrong, and we figured out a lot of stuff that was right, and I'll try to share most of the right stuff with you. So some of this just at the beginning here is going to be some pictures. This was a swarm. You can tell by how bad the picture was that I took with an iPhone 4. So that's how long ago that was. This was early on in my beekeeping career. I was out helping. Actually, I was out being a slave to an older beekeeper who was mentoring me. And this swarm came across the field and blew up into a tree, and I was just simply amazed. And he was like, "Just watch where it goes. We'll get it later." So, just some pictures of some swarms and the way they hang. That was a big swarm. That was we put that in 2 10-frame boxes to leave with it. There we go. These are, we live in Florissant. We get a lot of calls from Florissant. If anybody was from Florissant, they could recognize that's the bank that's up on St. Francis, and this was hanging in a tree. Just the different ways they hang. That was hanging in a bush that was very difficult to get out, very easy to get out. When the trees get bigger, they get a little bit harder to get out. This picture here, I kind of like this picture because don't think you can't collect a swarm at night. We got this call at about 9:30 at night. There was a guy swimming in his pool. This is his fence. He was swimming in the pool in the yard, and he kept hearing something, wondering what it was, so they were still moving around. So I get the call, and at 9:30 at night, we went over there. This was a weed, so he didn't care. We were able to cut a couple branches, and that thing just laid down in a box, and poof, it was done. They weren't real interested in going anywhere. Okay, so you're a beekeeper. You get the swarm call. Hey, we got a swarm of bees. You want to come and get them? Ask questions, and we've made a list of the questions that you should ask, and I'll explain something here. What's your name, address, and phone number? Write it down. You're going to forget because the excitement starts to get to you. You're going to forget, so write down a name, address, and phone number. That way, if you get lost on the way there or anything else, you can answer all the questions because you have it on paper. Are you sure they're honeybees? So I said we collected 19 swarms last year. We probably went on about 30 swarm calls. 10 of them were yellow jackets or wasps. But you do get that if with the advent of all the camera phones and everything, try to get somebody to take a picture and text you a picture and tell them to get really close, which a lot of people won't do because they think that they're going to get attacked and carried away. But are you sure they're honeybees? That's a really good question to ask, especially if you're traveling a distance. Have you sprayed them with anything? Have you or anybody else sprayed them with anything? Even with water. Water makes a mess out of bees, out of a cluster of bees. You end up with dead bees all over the yard. It just makes a mess. But if they've been sprayed with pesticide or any kind of canned bee spray or fly spray or anything, just don't even go. Tell them, say, sorry, you know, what's there, we'll leave within the next couple days, but you don't want to go take something that is full of pesticide and put it in your equipment because you end up contaminating your equipment. Are they on your property? That's a good question to ask everybody, because they'll call, you'll get a call, and they have a swarm of bees, but guess what? They're on the neighbor's property, but they can see them. So they want you to come and get them. They're excited too. They want you to come and get them. But when you get there, you're going to be asking permission from somebody else, again, to go on their property. We never trespass to collect bees. I've got some pictures later that I'll show you, but one of the instances is we collected a little swarm off of a hummingbird feeder that was really super easy to collect, but it was the middle of the day, so we dropped it in a box, we left it there to allow any bees that were coming back to come back. It had started drizzling just slightly and got a little bit cooler. When we got back, you know, you pop the top just to see what's in your box, and it was empty. And it was like, wow, that's interesting. But standing there just looking around, there they were in a neighbor's tree. So now we got to get permission from that neighbor to go over there and collect them out of the tree, which they were good about that. And we made a little video of it, of one of the tools I'll show you that we use, which is, if you go on our Facebook page, we have a Facebook page called Tinker's Bees. If you go on our Facebook page, that video has over 20 million views now. It went all over the world, kind of cool. Where are they? So, are they in a structure? Are they in a pole on a front porch, you know, where somebody's built a four-sided pole and they're inside the pole? Are they hanging in a tree? Are they in a bush? Are they hanging from your house on the third story up? It's all really important. And you may choose, by the answer to that question, to not even go get them. I'm going to tell you that if they're 3 stories up on a building, I don't go. I don't have the equipment to go that high. I'm not going to get hurt. So I end up not going. Tell them, sorry, I can't help you with that. If they're 40 feet high in a tree, I can't help you with that. So where are they is really important. And here's the next question. How high are they, and what's the ground like underneath of them? I've got a picture that you'll see later that where we were allowed to cut into the brush that was growing in these people's backyard. Otherwise, we would have never been able to get them, because as I walked up to them, I could see the swarm, which was only about probably 15 feet in front of me, but I got to here, and then the ground went like this. Well, no way to put a ladder underneath them for me to get them without going in and actually cutting some brush, which is another big thing. Get permission to do that if you're going to do that. How big is the swarm? So you can make your own decision, but we go after all of them. It doesn't matter how big they tell us they are. We go after all of them, and the reason that we do that is because we want to get the call the next time, or we want them to tell the people that we're available to collect a swarm the next time. If you don't go after it, they're going to call somebody else, and then now that person has your place. So using a ball, a softball, a volleyball, a basketball, a beach ball is something that most people are familiar with, and they can gauge them off of those size. But realize that when somebody's looking at a swarm of bees and they're all excited that this is a volleyball. So you have to be kind of prepared for when you get there. Don't be shocked if you just have a little bitty ball of bees hanging there. But we do go after all of them just because I want to get the call the next time. And then how long have they been there? Well, they just gathered up. Okay, they just gathered up when? Well, yesterday. Well, chances are good that, I haven't seen them where they've stayed more than a day. Literally, I have not seen a swarm that's been somewhere for 2 days. But I have seen them where we get a call at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the bees, they just watched them come through the air and they gathered up. And by the time we get there at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, when I get off work, they're gone. You know, that happens too. So that phone number, the address and the phone number can be really important to call back when you're about ready to leave and say, hey, I'm in Florissant, I'm driving all the way to Forestell for this swarm. Are they still there? And being able to get a hold of somebody is kind of important about that. It'll save you some time and money, gasoline. All right. So that's my wife in her bee suit. I have to show a picture of her. She gets mad if I don't. But this is one of the things that swarm was on a branch that was about this big around. That tree was really stout, almost impossible to move. So it's just, the only reason I included this is because you run into them every way. Jane and Scott told me about a way to get a swarm that would have worked perfectly here with a frame of drawn comb. I've used that multiple times since they brought that up. It's been years ago, but a frame of drawn comb, pressed it into that, and they would have walked right off that branch onto the comb. They like the comb better. It would have been great. But otherwise, you may end up with a bee brush or whatever. And this also kind of shows the setup here. We've got a ladder that we're going to go up there and get it with. We put down a sheet, a light colored sheet, so when we do shake or sweep or do whatever you have to do to get the bees off, if they fall on the ground, you can see them and you're not walking on them so much. Something to collect them in would be we brought one of our package boxes because they're real light. They're easy to handle. They got a screen on them, and you can just get them in there and then drop them in a box down below. So it just kind of shows our setup. What to bring when you collect a swarm. People ask, do you need to wear a bee suit when you collect a swarm? Well, some people say you don't. Do you wear a bee suit when you work your bees? I wear a bee suit because I don't like getting stung. It hurts every time I get stung. For some reason, that hasn't changed over the last 10 years. It hurt the first time, and it hurt last year when I got stung last year too. So I don't like getting stung, so I dress up and protect myself. Any tools you would use when you work your bees, have them with you. Appropriate size bee boxes in every other size you have. And the reason that I say that is because this thing is the size of a beach ball. Well, then you get there and it's the size of a grapefruit, and if you have a 5-frame box with you, you'd be much better off putting that in a 5-frame box and dropping it into the 10-frame that would be needed with a beach ball. So bring more than you need is the real answer. Ratchet straps and anything else you would use to move a colony. So I suggest a ratchet strap. They don't stretch, they don't come loose, and depending on whether you have a truck, an SUV, or a car, those bees could end up in the back seat. So keeping the lid on tight is a good idea till you get home at least. That way they're not in the car with you. Appropriate size ladder and the next size up. So if you make the call and somebody tells you, well, the bees are 6 feet off the ground, they're probably closer to 10. So a tall ladder, we carry around an 11-foot ladder and a 6-foot ladder. And then I have the back of my truck, and I'm not afraid to get on a roof. There's several things that we do to collect swarms, and sometimes you have to be a little bit of a daredevil. Collection device, a bucket, a box. Somebody told me today, I did a presentation earlier this morning, they told me about a guy that showed up with a pillowcase and dropped the bees into a pillowcase, which that's actually not a terrible idea because it's breathable and you can turn it inside out, shake them right into a box when you got them home or whatever. And then the custom made collection devices, we'll get into that in a second. My wife came up with a brilliant idea years ago and we still use it. A light colored sheet, that's to put on the ground. So when you knock bees out of a tree or whatever and they end up on the ground, you can try to avoid stepping on them. Pruners and a tree saw, I always bring them with me. We get to use them about probably 25% of the time. Most of the time a homeowner does not want a branch cut if they can avoid it. Even if it's the ugliest tree or just some weed that's growing along the fence in the back. It's like, no, don't, just let's not do that. But we do carry them with us because a lot of times, if they will allow you to cut things, you can make this process so much easier just by trimming off foliage and you might be able to pull a whole colony out on a branch, that you can just shake into the box. And a bottle of honey, a gift for the swarm reporter. So always bring a couple because you're going to get somebody that reported the swarm and they're going to be sitting there having a beer with the next door neighbor. And it's kind of a little bit lopsided when you hand somebody one, you look at the other guy and you go, yeah, you're out of luck. Or if it ends up on another property and you have to give up two, but it's always good to give them something. It's just a reward for number one, for not hurting the bees, and for number two, for calling you. So this is that one I was telling you about, where it was on a little hummingbird feeder that was 3 feet tall, really easy. Put the box on the ground there, lift it off. I think I have, oh, look at that. We have video even, and it's just, this is easy. This is an easy swarm collection. I've got old frames in there with drawn comb on them. The other frames are right there. So that is the only thing that we give them, and then we do feed them, okay? When I got that home, I would have put a feeder in it and gave them some sugar water. That is what we use to hopefully entice the bees to staying in that box rather than moving on. We've only had a couple of them move on in all the years we've been doing this, so our percentage is very low. People say to take a frame of brood, open brood out of another hive and put it in there. I'm not going to weaken one of my other colonies to try to get a swarm to stick around. If that swarm has the urge to take off, the chances are good they're going to go. So this is the reason, when we shook that in there, this is the reason, so that box stayed there all day. We went and got a pizza, and then came back to get it right around dark, just before dark. And that's just so the flying bees have an opportunity to find the colony, the colony. So this is the next door neighbor's yard for that one. When we got back, that colony was empty. I lifted the lid and I was like, crap, what a bummer. It was in Florissant, so it wasn't that far away from us. But so this, if you don't have one of these, make one. That is a water bottle, a 5-gallon water bottle that I cut the bottom out of. That is 2 furring strips, which were $2-3 at the hardware store, and about a half a roll of duct tape, and I had a tool. All right, the furring strips bend really easy, and we're able to push that together, and the tool works brilliantly.
One jam.
That was it.
Wow.
That was it. Like I said, it had cooled down a little bit that day, so the bees weren't real active or anything.
Yeah.
Now we have a second iteration of that tool now. So that tool now has, rather than having the wood here, I hollowed this hole out a little bit, and I had to use a whole bunch more, another half a roll of duct tape to get it to fit, to get a pool skimmer pole that's extendable to fit up into here. Then I took the wood off and I bought 2 aluminum straps, $6 or $7 for 2 aluminum straps, taped them to here and brought them down to the pole. So now that tool extends out to 15 feet long. And I built that. I mean, that was a $3 pole at a garage sale. So it was not expensive, but that right there, you can. So this was actually step number 2. This was 40 something feet up in the air, crazy stuff. I should have told them that I was just gonna let it go, but I didn't. I'm up on the people's roof. I took the pool extension and I taped it inside of the wood so it would go to 20 feet long. That was kind of a mess, but some of the crazy things you do when you're trying to rescue bees. Plus it was in a pine tree, which is a nightmare, a little more of a nightmare, but I had some good film crew on the ground. In that evergreen, it was very difficult because they wrap themselves around. It's very difficult to get them out. But then you need a couple people to take your 25-foot pole and make it work so you can get it down into a box. That becomes more than a one-person thing. Oh, there's number 2. So same. No, it's not. It's a different bucket. I lied. But same bucket technique and everything. Just a couple aluminum straps. It's plenty sturdy. You get extended out there 15 foot long. If you got 15 feet and you're on a 10-foot ladder and you can't get the bees, it's up to you. But go home.
Okay, this is our new,
This is the one that I was talking about. So when I talked about the ground being, what's underneath of it? What's the ground like underneath of it? So you can see this goes down a real bad hill right here, and the swarm was hanging right up there on this side. So it was one of those things from the people's yard, which started down here, we couldn't get to it, but they didn't care that we went up in that brush and just made a path to it. So
had to cut a path into the woods to get to this one. Just a little patch of trees on somebody's hill. But I got in here, and I think just about underneath of them.
and then
Trim a
they
few more
didn't care
bushes.
what we cut, so we were able to cut more branches to get to use the bucket underneath of them. So this is one of our bee yards where the lady has an orchard, and I'm gonna play the video. She called us and said the bees were hanging in that tree, and we got there within an hour, hour and a half, and we're looking around, and we actually have bees in this yard. But we're looking around and we can't find them, and all of a sudden my wife tells me, she says, hey, look over there, they are right there on the ground. So they were literally on the ground. The queen had a broken wing, couldn't fly. So she evidently fell out of the swarm, whatever was there, or got injured landing, or they ran over, or whatever the case was. And she ended up on the ground.
Because there was a swarm in this tree right here. By the time we got here, they were gone. But they are right there on the ground. So we're going to try to get the queen up on a frame and then put it in a box and let these bees march on in.
This is the
We'll
nice
try to take some
technique that
pictures
these
and
fine
videos
people
on
from
the
his
way.
bees told me about
By
with
the
the
way,
frame.
We have a stand of hives right there. Don't know if there are bees yet, but we'll find out.
And they weren't. They were not ours. But this is, I'm gonna
And they are just running up on it.
put
That
that
gets
frame
their
down
best
there
friend. This
with the
is
drawn
really actually
comb
pretty
on it.
cool the way this is going
And they
on.
couldn't get off the ground fast
It's
enough.
been less than
They
a
were
minute.
running
Look
all
at
over
that
the top of
frame.
each other.
Pretty
Look at
cool.
how fast, that's
We'll try to
real
get some
time, how
pictures
fast
on
they
that.
filled that frame up. And they did that with 2 more frames. There was a good pile of bees on the ground.
Short videos here. We did put a third frame down for a little bit. Less of the bees seemed interested in it. You can see they're moving into the box. These bees are lining up and marching their way towards the box.
That is almost a 100% sure sign that you have the queen in the box. So if you've ever collected a swarm, or you've had bees on the ground, or anyway, collected a swarm or whatever. Okay, so let's say a swarm, and you put them in the box. You end up putting the lid on them. You get the primary pile of them in the box. Put the lid on them. It doesn't take long before they start getting a good whiff of the pheromone that's coming from that box. And if it's on the ground, they will line up. That's why we use the sheet most of the time. Couldn't on this one because the bees were already on the ground, but anyhow, we use the sheet. You set that box on there, make the entrance so it's easily accessible for them, and they line up like soldiers and march their cans right in there. It's amazing to me. I get a thrill out of it every time just watching them line up like soldiers and march home.
So you walked up to that pile on the ground and you saw the queen.
I got down on my hands and knees and found the queen in that pile. And I set that frame right next to her, and she ran up on that frame immediately. And you see, that was real time. So it was 30 seconds or 45 seconds. They had that frame completely covered. And then we put another one down there, and they did the same thing. So did the queen make the huge difference, or was it the drawn comb? I don't know, but it was pretty impressive. I was at that point, I believed everything that Jane told me about that.
But you knew you had the queen on the first frame.
Yes, and we
So
got her
that's
in the box. Yes.
So you said she was injured. Did you have to requeen it, or did they make another queen? How did that survive?
Okay, here comes some of my bad beekeeper stuff. I never requeen a hive. They requeen their own. They're smart like that. They've been doing it for longer than anybody that I know that can tell me how to do it or when I should do it or anything else. So it's just one of the credits that I give to the bees, that they've been doing that longer than anybody else, so I let them do their own. And yes, they did. They did supersede that queen. I don't think it takes them very long. When you see a queen that looks kind of goofy, You get back to that hive in the next week or two, and normally there's gonna be super seizure cells in there. They don't take long about getting rid of one. Or if you break open your hive and you notice that she's become a poor performer, it won't take long before they put a new one in her place. And to your presentation that you did up here, and I will tell everybody this because I'm no longer afraid of everybody yelling at me, we are treatment free. We're 100% treatment free beekeepers. Strong colonies will most of the time take care of themselves. Yes, I believe, I'm not saying that we don't have mites or that we don't have hive beetles or that we don't get something else going on in our hive, but a strong, solid colony a lot of times will fix their own problems. If a colony is getting weak, you can spend gobs and gobs of time and gobs of money on different things trying to treat them for this and that, and normally they're going to dwindle and go away anyhow. So we just don't put anything in the boxes. I don't want to eat it, so I don't put it in the boxes. Somebody said something about a huge swarm. This thing was a monster. That's Jeff. Jane knows Jeff. And this was in the common ground behind him. That was actually about probably 75 feet from the one that I collected at 9:30 at night. But this is actually,
Here we go.
you just get to see how big it is. When you get
He's
the
gonna bend
opportunity
this down, folks.
to bend a branch, break a branch,
Just
do
right
whatever,
above
it
that
makes
box.
life easy.
Way down, Jeff, as far down as you can go. I'm gonna help you a little
I didn't have a suit on, so I was staying away.
bit. That'll be all right. Oh, maybe. Yeah, Tracy, gonna scoot it.
Right there.
Okay, okay, I got this branch, all right? Let that branch go. The big branch. Tracy, that needs to be nipped off.
Call you up.
They had separated onto a couple branches,
Just
and
set down
you
the
kind
box
of
to
get
the
worried about
bees
where the
over there.
queen is. So
You holding it, Tracy?
if you have the opportunity to cut something off, they're going to cut that off, drop that down in the box, and when we get the picture from the side, which you'll get in a minute, you'll see this hive was, or the swarm was spread out on that branch,
Okay, let me
big
get
enough that you
a
couldn't
better
shake the whole thing right into the
here.
box.
And bend it over there, or okay, get to shaking, brother.
The shake ended up perfect though, because the bees went down
Okay,
in the box
now,
and the other ones were right at
Look
the
in
entrance.
that
They
front,
could
see if
just
you can
move
see the
right
queen
in.
in there. Tracy, you got a full suit on. Go ahead down here.
Yeah, I don't like getting stung. I just don't enjoy it. People say you get used to it. I tell everybody, start hitting your thumb with a hammer and tell me when you get used to it. All right, well, I think that's the end of what I have to jibber jabber about. I mean, that's our technique. Everybody is going to develop, and this is something that, you know, I watched people. I helped Larry Hensley, who was that first swarm that was up there. He kept bees he's 80 years old now, so he's trying to retire, but he's kept bees for 60 years, and that's who I was a slave to for a while he was my mentor. That usually means that somebody's going to be the slave, but anyhow, and I watched the way he did it. I watched the way other people did it, and you know, watch 1,000 videos and develop your own technique. The tool that we have there with the bucket on it, or with the water jug on it, people use those with the bucket. Some people put a frame inside of there and just raise it up there and leave it lean up against there and hope that everything walks in. There's 100 different ways to skin this cat, and this is just the way we do it. So, yes, sir.
So you mentioned with one of those that you tend to leave it till the evening and come back. Do you do that with all of them?
Yes. Yes. If I want as many of the bees that are flying, because there could be scout bees that are coming back, or the swarm, if it just started forming an hour ago, sometimes we've collected small swarms that when you get them home and you open the box the next day, it's like holy crap, because another 10,000 bees have flown to that box, to that area where they were. They were told to come there, they just weren't there yet. Yes, sir.
You ever use lemongrass oil?
So lemongrass oil I use in a trap. I've never used it to try to keep them in a box.
I've had swarms so I had to retreat, put a box of lemongrass oil in the box, and a couple hours later, they migrated to the box.
Awesome. That's
Twice.
yeah. I keep a trap on my shadow box cover on my back patio. We have a bee tree that's 2 streets over, and it's either going to swarm into their next door neighbor's yard, and I go get them there, or they just fly straight to my house and do a special delivery. But but no, I've never used it to keep them in a box, but I have used it in a trap, something to attract them to a box, which it
They were
sounds like.
just too high up, like 60 feet up, I don't know about to do.
Yep. And I will tell you this, if you see bees in the air, if you get to see a swarm actually in the air, go be close to it. It's really cool. If you got your bee suit on especially, I walked out right in the middle of a couple of them and just watched them buzz around and fly around. It's disturbing how loud it is, but it's really cool to see it going on. At least I'm fascinated by it. And another thing too is the loud bangs. That does work. We've experimented with that on multiple occasions in our own yard when we see the swarms coming in from the neighbor's tree. And you bang things and they will settle down pretty quick, like something loud that has a pretty sharp. Tried it with wood, didn't get any real good results, but I got a big aluminum pot that I cook sugar water in the backyard, and beating on that with a stick or something, it makes the right kind of noise, I guess, and that will settle them down onto a branch. You just have to hope that they settle down onto a branch you can reach. Yes, ma'am.
If they settle on a rigid structure and you can't vibrate it or hit against it, do you have to scrape them off?
That's a time when I will actually use a bee brush. I call a bee brush a bee pisser offer. Just because most of the time that's what I feel that they do is make the bees mad, but at that point you got to do something. So a bee brush just to sweep them into your container. If you can get your container, whatever you're going to put them in, close to them or below them. If we have it below them, a lot of times I'll leave the lid off and leave the hole in the inner cover open. If it's close to them, I go ahead and close it and just leave the entrance open on the container. If you can get it close to them and you do manage to get your queen in there, as long as it's a swarm and it's not a colony that's moving in and out of a space, you're going to get those bees. Those bees are going to go where the queen is. Most of them will. If she hung out up there for 8 or 10 hours on a branch or on a piece of trim on somebody's house and she's got her pheromone all over it, there's going to be bees up there that are like, hey, she's right here. I can't see her, but she's here. And you have to, that's one of the things you suffer through. And a lot of times nightfall or the evening will bring those bees even that are hanging out on a branch because the queen has her pheromone all over it. It'll bring those bees down to a box that you have on the ground.
So I wonder if this happens quite often. My first one, I had 2 swarms that went to the same tree within like days apart. So, and then last year I had 2 go on my neighbor's deck. Same thing, like days apart, they just went back to that same spot. And then the last 2 were on the bottom of a bird bath that I have. And the goo was huge. I mean, it was only 3 feet off the ground, but it was just huge. But they did it a second time too, so it's
Yeah.
just interesting how they will go to the same place.
So that bee tree that I talked about, I live in a regular subdivision, so 2 streets over. That bee tree, they swarmed. Every time they swarmed into a Rosa Sharon bush that was on the fence line. Every time. So when we got the call, we knew where they were going. Well, then the neighbor behind them cut the Rosa Sharon bush down. So now they swarm into if they don't come to my house, they swarm into the trap. They swarm into a bush on the neighbor's, in the neighbor's yard. So that's really frequent. We collected multiple swarms out of what's the place called? The marketplace, Florissant Marketplace on St. Francis Street. They swarm from the building. There's a hole in the building above a column where they go in. They're living there. and then they swarm to a Rosa Sharon bush but it's just down to the bush, and we just go get them. So yeah, that's not uncommon at all. We got a call into U City one time where we pulled up, and actually we met somebody who I tried to mentor a little bit. His name was Den. But he came out and he goes, hey, what are you guys doing? He saw us putting our bee suits on. I said, we're here to collect some swarms. And he goes, well, those bees in that tree right there are mine. You leave them alone. They were in his yard, which was all fine and dandy. Those bees were in his yard, all good. But the swarm that we got called for was in a tree across the street in the curb strip. So when we pulled up, I saw it as we pulled up, and I thought, okay, well, there it is. And then we get out, and there's two. And it was two different swarms, one of them with a virgin queen and one of them with a queen. So, I don't know. And then that tree swarmed again later, and we got the call from the young man who didn't want us messing with his bees, but it swarmed into his bush. So we went and collected those, and they're still alive on one of my stands. He's kind of disappeared, but I still have his bees on one of my stands.
Do you keep all these swarms for yourself? I mean, generally.
Some, because we have some winter die-offs, so I try to replace some of the winter die-off with them. A lot of times I will take there's nobody from the city of Forest in here, right? So anytime, we nurse some of the swarms to a healthy laying queen where I know it's gonna be a viable colony in our backyard. We're not supposed to have bees in our backyard because we live in Forest and there's an ordinance against it, but whatever. And then I've had people call me and say, hey, we lost all our bees last year, can you help me out? And I'll give them a swarm. Or somebody that wants to expand their apiary area a little bit, yes, I give a lot of them away. Yes, sir.
Who would you say, because I probably did, I don't know, 8 or 9 of them last year. And sometimes, and I have that, I don't know if I've seen your talk before, but I know that list. which is really helpful. It's a great thing. People don't know how long they're there. They're like, so finally, like, how long has it been there? Oh, I don't know. I just saw it yesterday. And then I go, and one was like in a picket fence. It was like woven on both sides. It was fucking awful. And then she goes, oh, actually, I think they've actually been there for 3-4 days. I'm like, oh, and I knew that we had like 2 really cold nights in the midst of that. Would you just walk away? Because so I ended up collecting them as best I could. I was able to get the box, and they walked in, and I coerced them in. They got in. It didn't make it, and I just don't know if the queen just died eventually, or like what happened. But
I always try to collect them. We always try to make an effort. I haven't walked away from that many of them. Most of the time, if it's a phone call is when I turn them down. That, hey, look, you know what? I understand that you got a problem with the bees, but they're out of our reach. I'm not gonna kill myself for them. But we do always try to. We went and got one last year that was on the old privacy fences when they put a 2x4 here, 2x4 here, and then built board, just to save wood. It was in there with a bunch of ivy that had grown in there.
Yeah.
What a nightmare. What a nightmare, but we spent the 3 hours or so there and tried to work them out, and yeah, they didn't make it either, but it's one of those things. The easy ones are always more fun. Everybody thinks you're a genius because you were able to go in there. Look at that, they were here for 15 minutes and them bees are gone. Oh, they've been here for 3 hours, and then they call you tomorrow and say, hey, there's a little ball of bees still there. It's like, I'll come back. Yeah. And I do, just to be nice, I go back and I try to knock that little ball of bees down there. You can't do anything with it. I usually take them to one of my bee yards and I dump them out in front of the hives and I say, hey, there's a choice right there. Go find somewhere to live. But if it's a little bitty ball of bees, you can't put it back with the other bees. That causes an issue. They could just climb right in there and kill the queen or whatever. I just feel like there's too much disturbance with those stuff like that, but it's disturbing the people that they're there, and I volunteered to come get them, so I'm going to take care of it as best I can.
And if anybody hasn't done it, I just recommend it, because it does. It turns into a wine party or a cocktail party. All the neighbors come out. And then it becomes this forum for you to be able to teach about bees. It's really a pretty wonderful opportunity. I've never had a bad experience. Everybody has been so nice,
Yep.
and it always turns into a party. And it's just-
I got a call from the fire department, or I think she took the call from the fire department. The people that called the fire department, and we got a call from somebody anyhow. And then the guy said, he says, when that came in here, and that was the one that was on the fence. It was probably 5 inches front to back, and it was a 16 by 2 foot panel of them, and it was enormous, all intertwined in a bush, and it was getting ready to rain. Had my grandkids and my son and his wife, everybody was with us, so we showed up with 3 cars, or 2 or 3 cars, pulled up there, and went back and collected a swarm, and the rain came shortly after that. It was bad, but so the bees were in the truck. We didn't keep them in the back of the truck. We put them in the truck with us, and you end up doing what you got to do. But like you said, there's going to be people there to talk to, but so be prepared for that. Somebody's going to want to know what are you going to do with them? Well, are they going to make honey? Well, maybe not this year, but maybe this year. Depends on what you give them to work with. Maybe this year, but well, what are you going to do with the honey? I gave you the bees. Hold on, I have something for you. That's when you pop out the bottle. That's right. We don't charge to collect for swarms. I've had a lot of people offer to pay me. I never take their money because once again, I want that phone call from the next time. I don't do structural removal. I'm fairly handy with everything that I do. I kind of a jack of all trades kind of thing, and I feel like I could probably get away with it, but I just can't tear somebody's house up and walk away. That doesn't work in my brain, so I don't do structural removal. There's other people that they have taken every call that I've ever called them and said, here they are, and it's expensive. It's expensive, and they're handy people, and they fix it. So it's a start to finish process, and I work a full-time job. So.
Guy, can I ask you about Belle's question? Would you comment on whether you've had any colonies that don't successfully requeen and how you would deal with them? What do you do?
Buy a queen. Or so if they don't successfully requeen, a lot of times, it depends on the time of year that this happens. So if that happens when there's honey supers on, that's a bummer for me because I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't spend a lot of time in my bottom boxes when I got 4 honey supers piled on top of a hive. Kind of go off of what I see and try to gauge that, which, yes, there's been a couple mistakes along the road. But if it's in the spring and we're working on that, guess what? I'm collecting swarms. So a lot of times I'll take that swarm home, set it down. I know I got a problem, right? I know I got a problem in one of my apiaries, so I go get that problem, or I take the swarm to the apiary. The swarm goes on the bottom. The top is not queen right. I bring some newspaper with me and do a newspaper combine. And that has worked multiple times with swarms and swarm queens. It has failed as well, where they didn't, one party didn't like the other party's queen, and they took care of that business. But buying the queen is and that can be a good thing or a failure as well. So there's a whole lot of timing that goes along with that, and there's a different answer for so many stages that you're at, being queenless. So Corey Stevens sells virgin queens. Okay, that's the only way he sells them. Are you either buy a nuke from him, which I don't even know if he's selling those anymore, but he sells virgin queens. So you get virgin queens in, and if I order a dozen virgin queens and I do an experiment, I pull 12 splits off and queen all of those with virgin queens. Well, you see the way my hives are on my stands, they're really close together. A young queen can come back and accidentally step into the wrong building and they don't like her. There's things that can happen where those don't get queened out right. And I have taken frames of eggs with nurse bees on them and moved them into other colonies, but I don't like doing that either. Most of the time, a queen wrong colony gets combined with another colony. Even if I have to stack it a third box tall to do that, a lot of times I will do that and go back and split it later. But so many people say, you know, taking frames from this colony, you got a strong colony right here, you know, just go ahead and give this weak one that needs a queen 2 frames of eggs and hope that works. Well, now you've weakened this colony, you know, so now you have 2 colonies that, or you don't have that strong colony anymore, you have a good colony, and you have a weak colony that you hope is going to make it. So we care about our bees as much as anybody else does, but sometimes they're not meant to make it. I mean, sorry, but sometimes they just are not meant to be. There's something wrong and they need to go away. So just, you have to set that level in your own head where you're going to be with taking care of something that's not working out perfectly, how much time, effort you're going to spend on it, and how much resources you're going to throw at it. That's something you have to decide on your own and kind of go from there. And I know I kind of bounced around your question a little bit, but there's so many variables, and combining would be the thing that I would do most, probably combining them with something else.
So do you agree that you need, excuse me, that you should plan on going back and confirming that you are queen right? I mean, you don't just let them go.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we inspect our bees. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you know you have a problem, I have a system. I have blocks on top of my colonies, so they're the regular 1-inch thick patio walking stones. They're not squares. So if it's laying flat and it's front to back, I'm queen right. The hive is good. If it's standing on its end, it's dead. If it's turned sideways, I got a problem. I need to be in it. So, you know, and because I'm not a good note taker, I should probably be a better note taker. When you have 35 or 40 colonies spread out in 6 bee yards or 5 bee yards, you lose track really quickly. In the same day, you lose track of, oh, what did we just do over there? Which one was it? So the blocks give me, you know, when I pull up to a bee yard, I know, okay, there was something wrong with that, and then I normally, you know, it's in there. It's just recalling it. That's well, I'm done. Yes, sir.
So if you have a place where you repeatedly catch swarms, for instance, my backyard, I just have 2 hives in my backyard. I caught 5 swarms last year, and I don't think they all came from my hives. So, would you advise putting up a trap to attract them if it's likely that they're going to be a swarm?
100%.
Anyway?
100%. I think everybody should put an empty hive or some kind of trap in every bee yard, because the chances are, I don't know how good the chances are, but if it is your bees and they're looking for somewhere to go, bees aren't dumb. They'll look right in your own bee yard. So we have traps all around, or empty equipment stored. You know, I might have just a stack of empty equipment stored over there, and as long as it's got a couple frames of some kind of juicy comb in it, it's always attractive. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. And if they will come back. They swarm to the same spot frequently.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to stand up here in this nice auditorium and talk to everybody. I had a crowd of about 60-something seniors that I spoke to this morning. I've been trying to avoid work all day. I wasn't able to avoid it completely, but most of the day. Nice standing up here, nice talking to you folks. Great questions. Thank you.